What up, YouTube? It's Big Lou tapping back in with What It Do with Big Lou, NFZR2, No Fly Zone Ricans 2. I'm here again. Just finished recording and dropping the Serena Williams video, and now I wanted to drop this eighth wonder of the world from professional wrestling, none other than Andre the Giant, the legendary man himself. Born Andre Rene Rusimov. Andre the Giant died young. He was only like in his mid 40s. I know he died, what was it, 1993. And he was born in 46, so he wasn't old at all. Better known by, like I had mentioned, by his ring name, Andre the Giant. But he had went through a lot of different names over the years from the time he started wrestling. He's from France originally, and he was a wrestler, as we know, and he did a little bit of acting. He was in the movie Princess Bride, and then he also was in as like he played the like a Bigfoot type Sasquatch, whatever. And I think it was is it the Bionic Man or the $6 Million Man? And that was back in the early 70s. It might have been late 70s, early 80s when that show came off. Off the top of my head, those are only two things I remember him in, but I'm pretty sure he might have been in some other things. He was known for his great size, right? They say he was he would say he was 7'4" or 7'5" and like 500 pounds. I believe his real height's like barely 7 foot though, because there's clips of him or photos of him standing with Will Chamberlain. Will Chamberlain was listed at 7'1", and he was clearly taller than Andre. But then again, Andre, some of these wrestlers, such as like with Hulk Hogan, who was originally listed at like 6'7", 6'8" when he first started wrestling, and then towards the end of his career, he was at like 6'4", 6'3", and they said it was because of the spine. Like from doing the leg drop, Hulk Hogan, the leg drop, and different things. He had a lot of different surgeries on a lot of different body parts. And then with Andre the Giant, though, because it was said that he kept growing all the way until his death. So I don't know if it was possible for him, like height-wise, if he shrunk, because they say you get older, you shrink. But then again, he was only 45 or 46 when he passed, or 46 or 47 when he passed. So I'm not sure on that, but I do know that he could have corrected his whatever that was that he had. They said he kept growing, like his head and all that. That he could have had a surgery and they could have corrected it. And they said that the Giant, the Big Show, the Giant from Now Wrestling, who I believe originally when he came into wrestling, they said that he was Andre the Giant's son, I believe. Or they might have just said the Giant's son, I'm not sure. But anyways, he had the procedure done. So it didn't happen to him. But Andre wouldn't for whatever reason, he wouldn't take it and take the procedure to fix what was causing him to grow. And I don't know I can't tell you the name of it. I could look it up, but okay, yeah, which was a result, great size, which was a result of gigantism caused by excess growth hormone. It also led to him being called the eighth wonder of the world, right? We know that. So, I can't even pronounce that. So he died in Paris, France. I know he passed away, and he went to go see his mother, and then he went to this hotel room, and then they found him. He didn't answer for either the morning call to wake up or the room service, when they're at the door. He didn't answer. That's when they found him dead. And he passed from congestive heart failure. Okay, these are the different ring names that he's known by: Andre Rusimov, Andre the Giant, Andre Giant Ferrer, Giant Machine, Jean Ferrer, Monster Rusov. And okay, right here it says build at 7'4", 520 pounds. build from Grenoble in the French Alps. And he was trained by Michael Saulnier. And he made his debut in the ring in 1966, January of 66. Okay, so I'm going to read a little bit of this to give you guys a little background on besides the stuff that I know about him. So beginning in his career in 66, Rousimov relocated to North America in 1971. From 73 to the mid-80s, Rousimov was booked by WWF, which was when Vince McMahon Sr. owned it. So 3 W's and an F. Right? As a roving a special attraction who wrestled for promotions throughout the U.S. as well as in Japan for New Japan Pro Wrestling. During the 80s wrestling boom, Rousimov became a mainstay of the WWF, by then renamed the WWF. Okay, so let me give you a little background on that. So what I've heard, a lot of these promoters and different wrestling channels on the YouTube say that, you know, back then Andre would be constantly traveling through the different promotions, different territories. So he wouldn't always be in one territory, like later when he did become a mainstay at the WWF in the 80s. So prior to that, he was going, like they said, to Japan, Australia, Germany, probably Puerto Rico. He was all through the United States, Texas. He was going to WCCW, I'm pretty sure. He probably was wrestling for Blanchard, Tully Blanchard's dad. He probably was going to Portland in that promotion there. Probably the promotion out of the Bay Area, San Francisco, probably Georgia, Florida, you know, Missouri, St. Louis for Harley Race's promotion over there. Bill Watts' promotion. Then you had the Jim Crockett promotion in the Carolinas. You know what I mean? So you had all these different promotions, and then also they call it New York, but it's WWF, which is located in Stamford, Connecticut. So they consider that all New York, Boston, you know, New York, New Jersey, Philadelphia, Baltimore, all them eastern states right there, East Coast states. You know, so he was always constantly traveling because you don't want to keep him in one promotion for too long and burn him out. You know what I mean? Because who can really, if he's called the Giant, who really could beat the Giant? Right? There was no other wrestlers that was that big, right, at that time. 7 foot, no. You had Ernie Ladd, the big cat. Ernie Ladd was like 6'9". You had Blackjack Mulligan, like 6'8". You had Gorilla Monsoon, was like 6'6", maybe 6'4", but thick, real thick, like a gorilla, right? I guess that's why they call him that. You had later you had Big John Studd, who was 6'10", who was a rival of Andre the Giant, but that was more when it was the booming of the 80s. You know, when it was WWF. By that time, Vince Jr. had took over. I can't think of no other big. Ox Baker. Ox Baker was like 6'8" as well. So Andre wrestled all these guys. Then he also had a lot of wrestling matches with Hulk Hogan before Hulk Hogan became Hulk Hogan. He was still going under the name Hulk Hogan. He had just started using that name, I believe, because I watched a match earlier, Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. Hulk Hogan was a big dude back then. Like I said, he was listed at like 6'7", 6'8", and that was something new for a guy like that. He was like 300, 320, you know, a pretty big dude. He was pretty big, Hulk Hogan. And he had a lot of matches with Andre the Giant. And Hulk Hogan, from what it seems, because a lot of people hate on Hulk Hogan, a lot of people hate on Ric Flair, you know, yeah, they became big, huge stars, and yeah, they had a say-so, just like with anything. Anybody, like Conor McGregor, he became a big star in UFC. He's got a say-so. He says what he wants done and what he wants to be part of, and it is what it is. When you make that much money for a company, when it's all about putting asses in the seats, right? That's what they say in wrestling. So Hulk Hogan, from what, you know, he said in interviews, him and Andre were tight. And Hulk Hogan said that, you know, because Andre was so big, a lot of things were uncomfortable for him, like, you know, traveling, everything, because everything was so small, right? And he was big. Not only was he tall, you know, it's not like a basketball player who's 7 foot. You know, they're usually lanky, right? This guy was tall and wide. So Hulk Hogan say a lot of times he'd be walking behind him, and he would hear people's wisecracks talking shit about Andre the Giant, about his, his figure, the way he looked, his size, and like freakish, calling him a freak, stuff like that. Just cold-hearted crap. Nobody has anything to do with the way they grow like that. Yeah, people eat and they become real fat, whatever. They do have something to do with that. But Andre was a big dude, and Andre was in pain a lot, because of what was going on with his body and also the injuries he would get, but he drank a lot, and they think he drank a lot because of the pain, and he used it as pain, to cope with the pain, and also, his size. He wanted to be a normal sized person. Andre. Well, one thing I can't say about Andre the Giant, he did make a lot of money in wrestling, and he used his money wisely. Especially when these wrestlers would go to Japan because you had to be invited to Japan. You couldn't just go over there. You had to be invited, even if you were already a big star in wrestling. In some of these promotions in the United States, you still had to be invited to Japan. And the ones that I could think of offhand that made a killing, did well for themselves in Japan was obviously Andre the Giant. Hulk Hogan has been there. The Road Warriors did real well over there. Stan Hansen and Stan Hansen and Bruiser Brody did well over there in Japan. Abdullah the Butcher. I know Ric Flair's been there in Japan. Oh, the Funks, Dory Funk and Terry Funk did pretty well over there in Japan. So certain guys that they got that charisma, they got that they attract a lot of basically they put the asses in the seats. That's a term used in wrestling. So Andre the Giant did well. He bought property in, I believe, North Carolina. He had a big ranch, and then he had friends that lived there that helped him run the ranch while he was on the road, wrestling. But yeah, Andre the Giant, he had a loving family back in France that he used to visit a lot. He had a couple of brothers, I know for sure. I'm not sure how many. Well, let me see what this says. This might say how many brothers and sisters he had. I know every time they speak about him, they only mention a couple of. They interview a couple of siblings. I always see, and they say he had a daughter, and they said he left his most of his property and most of his assets to his daughter. He became a mainstay in WWF, being paired with the villainous manager Bobby Heenan during the feud with Hulk Hogan. Okay, I remember that. That was a WrestleMania 3 in Detroit, Michigan, at the Pontiac Dome, I believe it was called, where the Lions played, and that thing was huge. Andre was already, going downhill. He didn't move real well. He had just came off a broken ankle. He had something done, surgery on his ankle, I think it was, or his knee. And he headlined the main event at the WrestleMania 3 with Hulk Hogan. And Hulk Hogan tells a story of that, about he was, according to Vince McMahon, well, and even Hulk Hogan, I think, if I remember correctly, he even said it, that he didn't know what Andre was going to do. And he didn't know if, because back then they used to discuss the match and discuss the finish and all that stuff. And I guess Vince McMahon just said, "Don't worry, he's gonna put you over." And put you over means, in wrestling terms, that means he's gonna let you win, right? So they got terms in wrestling such as heel, which means a bad guy, a face, baby face is a good guy. Kayfabe is when you bad guy, good guy, they never get seen together. The storyline stays whatever it is that's being told. Sell it means that you make it look good, where the guy's beating up on you. You know what I mean? You make it look good. The heat means the feud you got with the person or the group or the crowd or whatever it is, right? Okay, so they did that one real well, the way they set it all up. All of a sudden, Andre the Giant got upset with Hogan, jealous of Hogan. Hogan was still champion. Andre wanted the title, right? and so he wanted to wrestle him. And they go to Piper's Pit. Was it Piper's Pit? I think it was Piper's Pit, or maybe Jesse the Body might have had a segment where he brought guys on. I don't remember, but something's telling me Piper's Pit. Andre comes on, Hulk Hogan comes out because Andre's with Bobby the Brain Heenan, who was a long-time heel manager, which means bad guy manager. And Hulk Hogan was like, "What are you doing with him, brother?" And Hulk Hogan, remember, always used to have his chain with the cross. And Andre grabs him and rips his shirt. And when he grabs him to rip his shirt, he broke the chain. And I think it was accidentally, but the chain ended up cutting him a little bit. And then Hulk Hogan, if you when he grabs him like this, if you replay it slow motion, you see Hulk Hogan going like this in his eye because he had like petroleum jelly or something, Vaseline, and he went to put in his eye to make him tear up because it was a big deal. Andre the Giant, turning like that. So they ended up setting it up from WrestleMania 3. This is 1987 at like I said, the Pontiac Dome, Detroit, Michigan. And Hulk Hogan was worried the whole time because they didn't talk about the match, how it was going to go, nothing. So when he gets in there, it wasn't a long match at all. Probably like 10 minutes, if I remember correctly. And he said that Andre, they did a few things, but like I said, Andre couldn't move that well at that time. And then all of a sudden, Andre tells him, "Slam!" Something like that. And Hulk Hogan picked him up, slammed him. And then he tells him, "Leg drop." And then he leg drops him, boom, over. Andre loses. And then in WrestleMania 3, they brought down everybody in these little like rings, these small rings that were motorized that moved. And they took the guys down the aisle, the wrestlers down the aisles to the ring. So when they left, they got back on that thing. And then when they're leaving, everybody's throwing cups at Andre. And he's looking back, talking shit towards Hulk Hogan. Hey, this is when wrestling was wrestling. It's nothing like it is now, right? So that was 87. And then in 88, he defeated Hulk Hogan to win the title. And this is when the angle, and this is another wrestling term, the angle means the storyline, basically. And what it was Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, was bribing, like, he made a deal with Andre, if he wins the title, that he'll buy the belt from him or something like that, right? So he defeated Hulk Hogan in 88, his sole world heavyweight championship. So that was the first time he ever held a title. Like I said, they never would leave him in one promotion or territory long enough for him to ever win a title. He was just like a special attraction, like I had mentioned earlier in the video. But on the first episode of Main Event, as his WWF career wound down after WrestleMania 6 in 1990. Yeah, 6. Rousimov wrestled primarily for All Japan Pro Wrestling, usually alongside Giant Baba, until his death. After his death in 93, Rousimov became the inaugural inductee into the newly created WWF Hall of Fame. He was later a charter member of the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Hall of Fame and the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame. The latter describes him as being one of the most recognizable figures in the world, both as a professional wrestler and as a pop culture icon. Outside of wrestling, Rousimov is best known for appearing as Frisick the Giant in the 87 film The Princess Bride. And I remember too, when they were talking about The Princess Bride, that a lot of times they had to help him because he wasn't moving well. And I remember them saying they had to put him on a line to get him on the horse. They had to literally lift him up. And also when the Princess Bride jumps into his hands, they had to they had to put her on the line where when he caught her easy because he was having problems. So I don't know how he got in the ring. If he couldn't catch that little girl, that little lady, how was he wrestling? But he was mentioned in the 74 Guinness Book of World Records as then highest paid wrestler in history. He earned an annual salary of approximately $400,000. equivalent to almost 2.2 million in 2021. So that's a lot of money. See, Robin Christensen is Rusinov's only child. Her mother, Jean Christensen, died in '08. Became acquainted with her father through the wrestling business around 72 or 73. Christensen had almost no connection with her father and saw him only 5 times in her life, despite occasional televised and printed news pieces criticizing his absentee fatherhood. While she gave some interviews about the subject in her childhood, Christensen is reportedly reluctant to discuss her father publicly today. Rusimov has been unofficially crowned the greatest drunk on earth for once consuming 119 12-ounce beers in total, over 41 liters in 6 hours. On Letterman, in January 23, 1984, Andre told Letterman he drank 117 beers. When Letterman asked if he was drunk, Andre the Giant said he couldn't remember because he passed out. He also said he quit drinking beer 14 months prior to his appearance on Letterman. On an episode of WWE Legends of Wrestling, Mike Graham said Andre the Giant once drank 156 16-ounce beers in one sitting, which was confirmed by Dusty Rhodes, the Fabulous Moolah. The Fabulous Moolah wrote in her autobiography that Andre drank 127 beers in Reading, Pennsylvania hotel bar and later passed out in the lobby. The staff could not move him and had to leave him there until he woke up. In a shoot interview, Patera recalled an occasion where Andre the Giant was challenged by Dick Murdoch to a drinking contest. After 9 or so hours, Andre had drunk 116 beers, a tale recounted by Cary Elves in his book about the making of The Princess Bride. Has Andre falling on top of somebody while drunk, after which the NYPD sent an undercover officer to follow Andre around wherever he went out drinking in the city to make sure he did not fall on anybody again. Another story also says prior to his famous WrestleMania 3 match, Andre drank 14 bottles of wine. An urban legend exists surrounding Rusimov's '87 surgery in which his size made it impossible for the anesthesiologist to estimate a dosage via standard methods. Consequently, his alcohol tolerance was used as a guideline instead. Yeah, I know that story too. In '89, Andre was arrested and charged with assault after he attacked a cameraman shooting his match with the Ultimate Warrior at Cedars Rapids, Iowa's Five Seasons Center. While acquitted on an assault charge, he was fined $100 for criminal mischief in order to pay KCRG $233, equivalent to $509 today, in damages to his equipment. Here we go. Andre the Giant attended a dinner with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Wilt Chamberlain. Schwarzenegger has quietly moved to the cashier to pay before Rusinov could, but then found himself being physically lifted, carried from the table, and deposited on top of his car by Andre the Giant and Chamberlain. So the ranch that Andre the Giant owned is in North Carolina, looked after by his two friends, like I had mentioned, and he has cattle. He has a lot of dogs there, and he used to get cruise the grounds on a 4-wheeler. There's a lot of stories about Andre the Giant by like Bret Hart, because Bret Hart is the son of Stu Hart, who they had Stampede Wrestling up in Canada. Also, I've heard stories by, like I mentioned, Andre the Giant. Also, Dusty Rhodes was pretty good friends with Andre back in the day. There's a lot of different wrestlers on these shoot interviews nowadays by like Hannibal TV and stuff like that, where they speak of Andre. Jake the Snake spoke of Andre, because Jake the Snake's dad was Grizzly Adams, or Grizzly Adams, not Grizzly Adams, Grizzly Smith, I think his name was, and another big guy, and so a lot of these guys, when they pick them up for their territories, they send their sons who wasn't big names yet at the time, like Bret Hart, like I just said, and Jake the Snake, and different guys. But Andre the Giant is definitely going to be remembered as what he was, the Giant, a special attraction in wrestling. Oh yeah, let me tell this story. So once I did, my dad took me. We went to the Oakland Coliseum, and I can't even tell you who else was on the card. I don't even remember. Only thing I remember was the final, the main event, which was, and I don't even remember who Andre the Giant's partner was. I don't know if he had a tag team partner because I can't remember, but I do remember it was King Kong Bundy and Big John Studd, and they were managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan. So I remember Andre throwing Bobby the Brain Heenan in the corner, throwing King Kong Bundy in the corner on top of him, and then Big John Studd into the corner on top of him, and then he ran into them, and then he came away, and they all came out like, and fell, boom. And I'll never forget that. I was a kid. I was only like 5 or 6 years old, so you're talking 1983, 1984-ish, 1984, latest 1984. And that's always a memory that I'll have, that I appreciate and grateful to my pops for taking me. You know what I mean? I appreciate my pops, setting up the channels and showing me what buttons to hit when I was a little kid. He would tell me, okay, you want to watch WWF? It comes on at this time, that time. He said, you push this, boom. If you want to watch NWA, Jim Crockett, it's this button. You want to watch AWA, it's this button. So I remember my pops got me, I was into wrestling big time. My dad used to buy me the magazines, the WWF magazine, and then there was a pro wrestling magazine that spoke about all the promotions at that time, which was it was Jim Crockett, WCCW in Texas, the Von Erichs, obviously WWF, Jim Crockett Promotions in Carolinas, and UWF, which was Bill Watts at the time, and then AWA. Those are the ones I remember very well. Georgia Championship Wrestling and all that was before, a little bit before that, earlier 80s. So I'm born in 78. So I remember this a little, like 84ish, 83, 84ish. I really started remembering. And then I watched it pretty big up until like 90. So I was like 12, 13. But those are the ones I remember. NWA, and a lot of different promotions were up under the NWA banner, as well as Japan and all that. So Ric Flair was their champion, NWA. Even though he fought out of the Jim Crockett Promotions, he was NWA champion. 365 days in a year, he would literally be working like 300 days a year, and he would travel to all the promotions wrestling their champion or whoever their contender was that they wanted to put in the ring with Ric Flair, the champion of NWA. So I know that WCCW, Texas was under NWA. I know Japan was up under NWA. I think even Puerto Rico, Carlos Colon and them was up under NWA. I know WWF before, when Vince Sr. had it, I think they were up under NWA. There was a lot of promotions under NWA. I believe Georgia Championship Wrestling, Florida, was all up under NWA at one time. Mid-Atlantic, and even Mid-South, I believe, too. So yeah, that's just a quick story on Andre the Giant. Like I said, definitely a legend, definitely a special attraction. If you ever seen him, you'll never forget him, especially in person, like when I seen him in Oakland Coliseum. And it just goes to show you, how mean people can be because somebody doesn't look how they look as far as size-wise. And, they get called jacked up names such as freak and all that. Like, come on. He dressed like a normal man. He did everything a normal man. He ate. He just ate more. He drank more. He was bigger. He was in a lot of pain all the time. You know what I mean? It just shows you how mean and evil people can be sometimes, man. And, a little suggestion. I mean, if you're a good parent, you're not teaching your kids any type of shit like that. You're teaching them to treat everybody fairly and with respect. But always have those talks with your kids about how mean kids can be, how mean people can be, how they should always pay attention and not follow the crowd of others saying mean things to people. I try telling that to my little girls all the time. So, just a little words of wisdom, words to the wise, however you want to put it, food for thought. You know what I mean? But with that being said, Big Lou gonna tap on out with What It Do with Big Lou, NFZR2, No Fly Zone Rican 2. Be sure to catch the No Fly Zone Ricans on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 4:30, 4:45 p.m. Pacific time. 7:30, 7:45 Eastern time, and that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Normally we go. Usually the day before the thumbnail's put out, Nelson will put the thumbnail out, and be sure to sub, like, and share. No Flies on Weekends, and also sub, share, and like. No, at What It Do with Big Lou NFZR2, and I should be figuring out soon here how to do the StreamYard and start doing some lives on this channel. And also I'm gonna do my darndest to dress this channel up, like I said in another video, and put get myself an intro, outro on this video, on this channel. Also start dropping thumbnails, because I think some of my titles are cool, and the hashtags, I don't clickbait. I'm not into that. You know, anything that I hashtag has to do with what's in the video, and I want to start. I want to learn how to do the thumbnails, and also picture in picture, or maybe do some video reactions. And also, you know, the main thing, the StreamYard, because I want to start doing live streams on the way to work or as I get to work. So with that being said, that's a little video on Andre the Giant, a true legend, the eighth wonder of the world. R.I.P. to Andre Rene Roussimoff from France. Oh, and you know what? I forgot to mention, because the Hearts were in Canada, Montreal. Everybody knows French Canadian. He used to like to go up there a lot, and like Ronnie Garvin used to spend some time with him. Ronnie Garvin speaks French. Ronnie Garvin's from Canada originally, and I believe Andre the Giant was around the Rougeau brothers a lot, and Gino Brito, Gino Brito, and Dino Bravo and them up in Canada. You know, Dino Bravo and Gino are Italians, but out of Canada. I don't know if they speak French. I think they do. I want to say they do. But Andre the Giant loved to speak in his native language, and Ronnie Garvin has some stories about them. You know, so you hear things like that, like I said, from old school wrestlers. And they tell some stories of Andre the Giant, and there's a lot of stories about Andre out there, but most of it's about drinking a lot and eating a lot. You know what I mean? But with that being said, thanks, folks, peoples, everybody out there that sub to our channels. I appreciate you guys highly. We appreciate you guys highly, and we appreciate your time and spending and joining us when we do our lives and taking the time to watch some of these videos. And again, Big Lou tapping on out.